So someone on the podcast made a bold prediction of 89 wins a week ago. Someone was a little worried on Thursday, and they were catching a lot online before, during, and after that game.
Yeah, if you've ever watched a live line in sports betting and just see it go down and down and down, that's how I felt about an hour into the Pirates season. That 89 wins went to 88, 87, 86, 85. I feel like that 80 wins, just getting over that 77 feels like it could be a struggle. A lot to look forward to. Yeah, the first couple games for the Bucks. Welcome back to episode 13 of Out of Town Yinzers. I'm Joe alongside Justin. We're talking Steelers, Pirates, Pens, and Pitt today. So crack a beer, sip a latte. Justin, let's jump right into it. I think the Pirates are where we have to start. Unfortunately, not the best first weekend. 89 wins seems like it's going down the drain, but it's only 3 games in.
Yeah, so I did get 3 or 4 texts on Thursday. Hey, have you checked on Joe? Is Joe okay? I think your response was, all right, 75 wins was Joe's take after the first 2 or 3 innings. About as bad as a game can. I guess Lau had the home run to start, so not really as bad as a game can start. But in general, that first inning for the Pirates in the field was about as bad as they can start. Skeens didn't look great, obviously. That goes without saying, but the average on balls in play, not sustainable. I think he pointed that out after the game. Those were 2 errors, essentially, by Cruz. I know they're not scored that way, but the reality, this isn't fantasy baseball, I think, hit real quick for the Pirates in the first inning. Things will even out. I think the takeaway here is this is every year, especially in baseball, people need to relax after one game. It's always the case. There's 162 games. If this was a Tuesday in August, no one would even talk about this game. I get it. I understand why people are so crazy, quick to jump on the Pirates, but it was one game, one series even. Calm down, relax. Not saying they're going to be incredible this year, not saying they're going to be terrible this year, but one inning isn't going to determine the way their season goes. Of course, there's some takeaways. If you look at it from the positive, I'll take the positive with them. They did hit, especially in game 2. They were not hitting with runners in scoring position, but that type of stuff usually does even out. So there were some bright spots. Lau, Ahern looked great. Love the way, especially it ended Sunday to kind of finish the series with Davis hitting and making the play, and Cruz actually having a nice play in the field. I think everyone just needs to relax a little bit. There was a lot of anger towards Cruz. I get it. We pointed out before the season, it's not fantasy baseball, but my takeaway is it's 162 games.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the truth. We've been talking the whole time that the Pirates defense is not going to be good this year. There's going to be a lot of times where you don't have that play made in the field that you expect it to be, particularly in the outfield. Absolutely atrocious outfield defense. I think that'll continue throughout the season. The thing that you hope for is that they hit enough to overcome for that in terms of those people in the outfield spots. The Skeens is a nothing burger when it comes down to it. He said flush it, you got to flush it. When you think about his first inning too, you had the walk on multiple pitches. So many of those were close. So I think he would probably say, hey, I was nibbling, shouldn't have been nibbling. Just get Lindor to put something in play early. That changes the whole inning when you walk the leadoff batter.
Right.
But there was not a hard hit ball in that inning at all.
They did walk a lot of guys this week. That is one thing that goes without saying, but yeah.
Well, the pitching staff was great. That opening day aside, there was a couple innings later, but, Skeens is still going to be Skeens. He literally, if he has those 2 balls against Cruz, he's out of the first inning with 2 runs and probably off to the races when it comes to the way he works. And the next 2 starts for the Pirates, great. Mitch Keller was great. Majinski had 8 strikeouts. He's someone that you wouldn't expect much of. Ashcraft's looking good tonight. You got Bubba Chandler, and then you got to come back around to the Skeens. So the starting rotation's holding up. The bullpen, I was always a little suspect going in, but those names that were pitching well last year are starting the year pitching pretty well this year. So is David Bednar, by the way. Still wish he was a Pirate. They got a bunch of schlubs for him, But at the same time, the one person I would say out of the first weekend and into the early part of this week that I'm most concerned about, and it's not Cruz, is Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds has had a strikeout in over half of his at-bats. He looked bad last year at times for long stretches. So he's someone that you do need in that lineup to lengthen it out. If he's not hitting and he's got to be pushed farther and farther down the lineup. Plus, with how bad his defense is in an outfield corner, he's not providing nearly the value that you need from the salary that he's bringing to the table.
Some of these older players, there could be a decline. That's what the worry is with, we know with him, Ozuna, some of these guys, there is a path to where maybe that decline starts or has already started. So something to keep an eye on for sure. It's baseball. One bounce, two bounce can change the whole series. So I'll put it this way. The Pirates get 7 runs in a Skeen start. Keller pitches, doesn't allow a run. And then the third game of the series, you go into extras. They're going to win 89 games if they get that every series. I mean, if you look at it that way, it's just the reality. It's 162 games. We can't be panicking because they want 1 and 2 in a series. Plenty of reasons to be optimistic about certain things. Plenty of reasons to be concerned. Just you got to let it play out a little bit here before we panic. Or if they were 2-1, will we be celebrating? Probably not. I mean, it's just you got to look at it both ways. Lau, O'Hearn look great. It looks like the moves they made, some of these moves that they made in the offseason do look nice. Looks like our bet's off to a great start. I'm probably going to bring that up about 30 times between now and 2 weeks into the season. But yeah, I mean, there's reason to be optimistic, reason to be pessimistic.
I think those are the more glaring reasons than the reasons why it would hit when it comes down to the day. The Pirates roster just really doesn't stack up top to bottom as some of the other rosters in the NL. While you have the starting rotation, you still have a Carmen Mlodzinski as your 5th starter. The Dodgers aren't rolling out a Carmen Mlodzinski when you think about that. So when you're kind of get to that 90 win threshold, it's a big number to get to. But really, if things were to flip, O'Neal Cruz is a big beta player. He showed that over the weekend. Brian Reynolds, I already talked about. And then I think at the end of the day, if you get that starting rotation that just has a couple of people falter, we're in trouble. That's one of the things when you trade away a Mike Burrows and a Johan Oviedo over the offseason, your depth is severely hit. And that is the case for the Pirates. They do not have the AAA depth when it comes to their starting rotation. You're really relying on a Jared Jones type of person to come in midseason. But in between then and now, there aren't too many ready-made arms that are ready to come from Indianapolis. There's plenty of ready-made bats. There's a lot of bats that could come in actually from AAA, but the arms are actually where they're a little bit weaker in the top end of the minors right now. Obviously, you could flip-flop, Hunter Barco, things like that into the starting rotation. He didn't look too great this weekend when it came down to it, but that's the thing that I would say is the starting rotation depth, couple injuries, as you would say. Pirates are not an organization that can sustain that. A lot of reasons why it could go to 79, not necessarily 69, but mid-70s when you think of the wins, but they definitely have enough pieces, and I think a Ryan O'Hearn, Brandon Lau, they're giving you those hopes. The other side of the coin, too, that I think after giving some downside is that we've talked a lot going into the season about Connor Griffin. Justin threw out an April 15th date. So, hey, Joe gets to see Connor Griffin in Columbus this week, and then he flips over. That could be the truth. He had an absolute phenomenal
8th,
weekend.
Actually. Yeah, it was April 8th.
Okay.
Yeah, was he hitting like 500 this weekend or something like that?
Yeah, he hit 500.
Just missed a homer.
Yep. 2 stolen bases, doubles, playing great defense. That's one when you think about that defense, too. There was a couple plays that Jared Triolo made or didn't make at shortstop. You have Nick Gonzalez as a third baseman starter versus a utility player. That's a big change, too. If you bring Connor Griffin up, put Tree over to third base, that really kind of makes a big difference to that defense that we're talking about, too, when you put Connor Griffin in the middle of it. And I really do think the sooner is going to happen on my May 15th bet, and that April 8th might be the Price is Right bet when you kind of think about it. When is Connor Griffin up for the Pirates?
Yeah, Triolo, you're right. He was up and down. He's a third baseman. But that relay throw was great. That short hop to make that pick, and I mean, that's a big play. But I agree. You play him at third, and all of a sudden, if Connor Griffin just plays an average shortstop with him at third, that left side of the infield looks way different for sure.
Yeah, so still a lot to look forward to. We haven't even gotten to the Pittsburgh home opener, which is a travesty that the Pirates haven't had a home opener in Pittsburgh since 2016. It's crazy how Major League Baseball just systematically, is against the Pirates. We're sitting here hoping the CBA is going to slant our way. There's no chance that's going to happen, but maybe we can still dream on it. But said a lot of baseball left to be played. The only caveat to that is you cannot get off to a tough start in April. If you get behind in April with the team that they have, you're really going to have to make a run in the later months. And that's somewhere I'd rather kind of leave, a few weeks of bad baseball to the middle of the season, the dog days of whatever, than to kind of get off to that start. Just as a fan too, it's It was so
Yeah, it's the
demoralizing
worst.
last year when it was mid-May and the Pirates season was already over. That could happen when it comes to the way the Pirates play too. So they could stack losses just like they stack wins, but they gotta just stay afloat long enough that they can kind of come around in the middle of the summer. You made the comment earlier if the opening day game was a Tuesday in August, nobody would talk about it. Well, I sure as hell hope we're talking about Tuesday in August.
All right, so I wanted to push back on Mr. Pirate a little bit. We will test Mr. Pirate later for sure. We got a nice little test coming for him later.
Steal the other team that's really in the heyday of their schedule, their season right now is the Penguins. We're taping this on Monday night. The Penguins are down to the Islanders. They have a huge game tomorrow night. Not as big as tonight, but when it comes down to it, there's only so many games left. There's a lot of teams still in it. The Penguins, believe it or not, it's the craziest thing that they could have this season, play so well throughout the whole season. And if the last 2-3 weeks don't go their way, they could be sitting on the sidelines come April. I think they're gonna be able to kind of hang on here. I think that's the question. How many wins? What's the point total that it's going to take for the Pens to see the playoffs?
We had posed the question last week during the show. I'm gonna say if they can get to 98, I think they get in. We are missing a wild period, by the way. It's 3-2 now in the second, so 5 goals second period here. Like Joe said, well, you'll be listening to this. You'll have some information we don't have. That's for sure in the next 2 nights. But I think 98 gets them in to 100. I think is going to be the magic number for the teams in the Metro here. Just this is a historic finish. Like I don't know if people completely realize. Somehow the Flyers are back in this. There are 7 teams now fighting for 4 spots, all within 6 points. It's really 6 teams, fighting for 3 spots within 3 points. It's going to be a memorable finish, regardless of if it goes the Penguins' way or not.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think you'd have to get at least 98 when when it comes down to it. You have some teams that are kind of fading. Like the Jackets had to play so hard for so long since January. You can kind of see they're fading a little bit. I'm local to Columbus, so I'm hearing it on local radio. Do they have enough to keep it going? I think the Jackets are in one of those aspects. The Pens, though, I think are in the same boat as the Jackets, where they're fading at this time of the season. They're not roaring. Just getting to overtime is not going to get them to the playoffs. They're going to need to put some true wins, some regulation wins at the right time, and really the playoffs start now. So when you think about their last 9 games as a playoff series, there'll be 2 games played before you guys hear this podcast. So really there'll be 7 games left. So when you're looking at the 7 to 9 games left, you got to win that playoff series. So you got to win half of those. I think that gets them into the playoffs. And at the same time, though, with the Pens, all of the things that have ailed them the last few weeks are so glaring right now when it comes down to it too. So you have the goalies that are just not there. Skinner, I think, allowed 6 goals in the last game, and then afterwards he's like, "Yeah, I thought I played pretty well." So that says all you need to know about how the goalies are playing when he lets in that many goals, and he's not even like down on himself. Doesn't even want to talk to the press. He's saying yeah, it was a pretty good game. So that's going to be the thing for the Pens is can they score enough to win in these games? Because they're sure as hell aren't going to be winning any games with 1, 2, maybe 0 goals, no shutouts. I don't even know when the last time they had a shutout from a
Well,
game perspective, too.
they've allowed 3+ goals in 12 of the last 13. Make that 13 of the last 14 because they've allowed 3 tonight. We're taping. Apparently, the first 2 weren't ideal. I think She Loves left the post on the first one. Either way, they've already scored 3, so it's 3+ goals in 13 of 14 games. Ironically, the one time they didn't allow that was against one of the best teams in the league, with the best team in the league in Colorado. And that was really just they scored enough early to where they got a lead and they kept it to 2. I don't know how you can have a streak like that during the season and be where they're at points wise. That's going to have to change. There's really no way into the playoffs if they keep getting to track meets every night. Carlson's been incredible. We talked about the last week. He is their MVP at this point. But yeah, they just got to get more out of the combination of their bottom 4 D-men and the goaltending it's just not sustainable. And then, we've been saying a lot of games have been big, and they have been. I mean, if they play a little better over the last 2 weeks, which I get, their schedule-wise, these games wouldn't be playoff games. We looked at it today. There's a 26% swing based on the outcome of today's game. That does not happen with 9 games left in a season very often for teams. I mean, This is one of the higher leverage games you could probably see on the entire NHL schedule in a year, especially with 9 games out before the end of the season. So this is a big game. This is essentially as close as you can get to a playoff game in March, to say the least. So this is a big one. Historic finish of the season. This game, I mean, 26% is just a wide, very big game. It is now tied. So we're missing a wild second period. The
What do you
Penguins
mean?
are
The
up
Pens
4
are
to
up
3.
4-3. Yep.
We are missing a crazy second period. So apparently defense not needed whatsoever. They're going to need to change that. They can't score 6 every night.
You
Yeah,
can't win in
talk
the
about
playoffs that
timing
way
here.
either.
No,
You know,
you
it's
can't.
let
Not
alone
when
like
team.
down the stretch. You definitely can't win playoff games if you
No,
can't play better defense. So
no.
even
Other
if they
teams
make it
start
in,
tightening up. It's not like the Penguins are all of a sudden going to tighten up defensively into the playoffs. That's already been a point of emphasis. So yeah, this is not sustainable. But that's going to be a fun last couple weeks. That's for sure. We're getting playoff hockey in March into April here.
you know, if you had to rank the top 3 most important Penguins to the season that they had right now, the way that I would rank them would be Carlson's the obvious one when it comes down to it. And then I actually think I would have a surprise too, which would be Anthony Mantha. The
Yep.
goals that he's played up and the points he's put up has been such a surprise and always at the right time. And then I think Crosby rounds out your 3. But the Anthony Mantha display this year has been tremendous for him to score. It could be, probably will be over 30 goals. That's not something you would have ever thought would have happened when you signed him.
No, and you asked the question. That was my obviously Carlson and Crosby, but that was my first thought was Mantha immediately. Like, no one else really popped in my head. So we certainly don't always agree, but I couldn't agree with you more on that take. So moving right along into the Steelers here, we're getting closer and closer. We're all in on the draft at this point. We're a month out from the draft in Pittsburgh. We're going to kind of set up for the next couple weeks here. We're going to go through the top 5 position needs going into the draft. So we're going to rank the position needs. We've talked about them. We've never really laid them out directly. We're going to exclude quarterback. I don't think that anyone needs to hear that they need a quarterback. We know that. I almost forgot to even mention that when we were, thinking about this topic. It just goes without saying at this point. So obviously quarterback is one. There's really not a close second. But when we're actually looking at the draft here, we're going to go through our top 5 position needs. So with the exception of edge and center, I do think they're essentially we've certainly gone in depth on the edge.
You're trying to ship half the
Frazier,
edges off. So like I feel like you're creating a need at edge. So why don't you put that number 1 at your list with your other
yeah.
offseason move?
I was wanting to move one. I wanted to move one. I haven't even been looking at the edge rusher. This is actually ironically, this is a good draft for edge rusher. Day 1 and 2. Center, Frazier, they're set. In theory, you could maybe late in the draft they draft a depth center, but in reality, your day 1 and day 2 board should just not even include edge rushers or centers. There's some other positions that maybe they shouldn't be prioritizing. But at the end of the day, if you look at the age, you look at the talent on the rest of the roster in general, you could almost draft every other position if you like the player enough, because I don't know that there's really building blocks at almost any position other than those two. Maybe you could convince me on 1 or 2 others. So we view the roster a little bit different, in terms of the way we might build it. I just want to be clear about that is you could talk me into almost a player at any other position when it comes to the draft. Now, that being said, my top 5, the way I went receiver 1. If you're building your roster for next year, maybe the next 2 years, I wouldn't have receiver 1. I just don't look at the roster that way. So I think they need playmakers at receiver would be 1 for me. Then there's probably a tier of a few things. I would go guard 2. They need to replace Sayamala. I think that's an important need. And then this is where we might disagree. I have tackle 3rd. So this is going to come down to, this is stuff we don't know. There's more reports coming out about Jones and health, and that's your left tackle positions. I'm getting more and more worried the closer we get, the more that isn't said, the more that's being reported about his health. So I do have tackle 3. That could be the whole way down to 6 if you find out he's fine, and I have my own concerns about him, but I do have tackle 3. And part of this too is just, for me, it's trying to prioritize the offense in general. And then I have linebacker and safety 4, 5. You could flip those either way, but that's my top 5.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad when it comes down to it. I wouldn't go exactly that way. The one thing I would agree with you though is it definitely is wide receiver 1. The Metcalf Pittman, they're both 30 years old. One of them's fast when he gets going. The other one's just slow. They're not going to get any faster, the 2 sides. So You need another wide receiver, probably two. Stay tuned to the end of my list. Wide receiver one, and then I would say the defensive backfield from there. So take your pick, corner, safety. You kind of mix them in, and I'm going to kind of just take that approach with guard tackle. So I think that's my middle, kind of the 2 through 4 is some combination of defensive backfield, so safety, corner, or guard tackle. I feel like they've had enough roster depth with what they've signed that you don't have to go one or the other. You don't necessarily have to go safety. You don't necessarily have to go corner. I think they just need more depth in both of those places. And then I think you round out your top 5 going back to receiver. So I think it's receiver 1, and then you go safety slash cornerback, guard slash tackle, kind of in that 2, 3, 4 aspect. So I'm breaking rules, and then back to receiver. So I think that's my aspect. I still think the Steelers need to take 2 wide receivers. What is crazy, and I kind of lead this into your mock this week, and we kind of talk through why you landed on it, is there's just so many picks for the Steelers when you think of the second round, 3 in the third, 2 in the fourth. Those are such great areas to get exactly these type of positions. So wide receiver, interior offensive line, safety, a nickel corner, something like that. Has to be a starting outside corner out the gate. That's exactly where you draft these type of positions. So it's a perfect place to be. They have a great roster coming together. They just have a glaring hole at the most important position of need. So.
Yeah, great roster, Joe says. Great roster. I do agree. They have some needs at non-high leverage. That's what happens when you have edge set. You have some needs at non-high leverage positions like an off-the-ball linebacker. You can get those in the second and third. You can get difference makers and playmakers because the position almost doesn't start sometimes in the first round. Like there are drafts where there's 1, maybe 2 of those that even go. This year's a little different, and it is fun. When you do these mock drafts, you start seeing the pockets that you like. And it is a good exercise because you do see like there's pockets at safety. Like you could just make your pick of like 6 different guys. Receivers the same way. So you start learning like areas of the draft where we don't know how it's going to go. These are simulations, but it does kind of line up that way. I didn't think about doing receiver twice. I don't hate it. I do think it's worth stating too. The thing that's going to be interesting to me about this draft, you do so many drafts with the combination of, and it was Colbert, then it became Khan and Tomlin. And Tomlin had a lot of say, obviously. I don't want to say you knew, but like you could tell we should have known they were making that pick. Or at the end there, they were picks I liked. But we were hitting, like we were predicting these picks. We were hitting on the Steelers. I'm like, I went 9 years without them picking a single guy I could have projected or liked. And towards the end, it's like you kind of know where they're going because you know this staff. It'll be fun this year. I have no idea where they're going to go, despite their needs, and it'll be interesting because you'll be able to see, okay, do they view these receivers as long-term fits? So if they go receiver in the first round, then that'll say, to you a lot about the receiver. If they go 2 receivers, like we're talking about doubling up, it'll say a lot about how they feel about building the roster, how, all of a sudden McCarthy wants to position his picks, because for a lot of times, it's almost like they always lean defense because they had a defensive coach. It'll be fun to see if that flips. Now that there's an offensive coach and there's some holes, like does he really want to prioritize and just go in on the line? They were starting to do that anyway, but it's almost like the tiebreaker always seemed to be under Tomlin. They just went to their comfort zone and always seemed to be defense. So it'll be fun to watch that moving forward here.
No, for sure. So you also blessed us with another mock draft today. So I'll do one next week as the other side, and you can kind of critique mine. But I'm going to run through your mock draft, and you defend it, and then we'll kind of talk through some of the pieces. It kind of went back and forth. So your number 1 overall pick is Jordan Tyson with Arizona State. Jennings Dunker, number 2. So wide receiver guard, just like your top list. Holton in the 3rd round. Ramsey, a repeat selection already in the 3rd round again for safety. So you're definitely targeting that safety in that block. You're there. And a Nussmeier pick again in the 3rd round. We got to stop doing the same picks. I feel like we're going to keep doing these mock drafts, but 2 repeat picks from last week. They came back around, but this time around a different receiver at the top. How'd you end up with this 5?
Yeah, so it was Tyson and Cooper were, basically what I was choosing from there. You could have argued against safety like we talked about last week. I do agree. I would rather them go receiver than I would safety, not just because I think the position is more important to the Steelers. Like I said, I'm not as worried about that. I do like the receiver in the first round. It's just more important position in today's NFL. So there are some tackles that I like there too. There's scenarios like we talked about before. If they were maybe to move down in the first, up in the second, would love them to do that because they could get one of these receivers we might like, and then also get either a tackle or a linebacker. The tackle is one position that does fall off pretty drastically after the second round, or really even after the early second round. And then you get into guys that have some, warts, which is fair, in general. But really at tackle this year, it seems like it's not a deep position. There's just only so many guys that have long enough arms and are 6'5", 6'6", and have the power that guys in the first round do it at that position. So yeah, again, Tyson could have gone Cooper there. That's becoming a debate now. But I think if he falls, I would be disappointed if the Steelers didn't go Tyson there if he was there at 21. So that was the
I
first pick.
completely agree with you there. I am a
Yeah,
huge Tyson fan at 21. I feel like a couple months ago, it was a it would have been a complete no-brainer. It would have been like, no way is he going to get to 21. And we're still a month away from the draft. By the time the draft rolls around, it could be back the same way, cycling back where there's no way that Tyson gets there. But
right.
the tape on Tyson is so good. He would have to come into this roster where he wouldn't have to be the one or the two coming out. He could really just play for packages that McCarthy would set him up for and ease him in. I think he would be a phenomenal pick. Slam dunk. And honestly, I would give a good grade to your draft just because you were able to snatch up Tyson at 21.
His 2024 season, so not last season, the year before, was the best age-adjusted season of any receiver in the draft. We're not in the room with the trainers to really know. Like, that's the hard thing for anyone, even analysts that do this all day, every day. Like, you don't know? So, not knowing all the specifics, I think that's an easy pick, to be honest, at 21. So, second round, this is the pick we debated last week, where we went corner. I went a little bit more realistic. I do think they could use a slot corner safety, but I think the guard position, you're going to want someone to play day one, whereas they could easily get by without a slot corner. I think this is probably more realistically what they'd be thinking. Dunkers, he's got that versatility that teams really like now. Teams are starting to prioritize that, a guy that can play, four different positions in the offensive line. So I think he'd be a really good pick for them at guard, and he could start day one at their left guard position. Again, like we talked about, you
I
could
love
go
a guard
DB.
that grew up near or went to college near a cornfield. Give me that.
Yeah,
That'll be work.
yep.
So,
Yeah, I like that. I like that in general. That if they played for Iowa, they're probably a good pick in round two. But they have some their whole line, their interior offensive line, even a tackle that could slide to guard in round three. They're just loaded. They were loaded on the offensive line. Linebacker two could go DB here. I'm sure we'll have mocks where we do that. Into round three, I went defensive interior here. These are the three picks that are sort of grouped together. You could go in different orders. I went with the position that has a little bit more scarcity at that point. We talked about last week safety. There's a bunch of safeties, a bunch of receivers you could have gone, and the way it played out, I ended up, sliding off of receiver. But Horton would be a type of receiver or a type of interior lineman that shoots gaps, things like that the Steelers could need. Maybe not. That would have been sixth on my list, but defensive interior could be a position with Cam Hayward at some point. Father Time is going to catch up to him at some point, but that could be a path they go. Ramsey, we talked about it last week, played out of position a little bit, my opinion, last year at USC. There's a lot of safeties right there. You could go a lot of different directions like we talked about. This is the same receiver quarterback range, and then same comp pick as last week again in Nussmeier. There is a lot, there's starting to be a lot of talk about Carson Beck, climbing. I don't know how you feel about Beck. I know you were kind of a Nussmeier guy, but I'm almost getting the sense that like Carson Beck's a slam dunk to go over Nussmeier at this point, the more that I listen to.
For Carson Beck, the one thing that NFL evaluators love are people that have had a lot of snaps in college. And there are very few people that have had as many high leverage, big game snaps as Carson Beck has and performed in that scenario too. So there's a lot to like about Carson Beck. He's someone that, 3 years ago, early in his college career, nobody would have thought he'd be a fourth round quarterback, someone
Right.
to kind of be on the higher end of that. He does have a lot of the skill sets that you have. It's just kind of people lapped him and it's almost kind of that shiny new toy isn't there anymore. One thing that
Right.
I would say when I kind of look at the mocks and I see it go through is that quarterback position in particular. If the Steelers do their homework this offseason, and they land, hey, we like Carson Beck, we like Nussmeier. I've said before, I think they need to find their like on somebody. So find your favorite in this quarterback class other than Mendoza and try to find a way to get him because that's how you're going to replace, a quarterback for our team is just keep taking swings. And in that mindset, if the Steelers do land on someone that they like and when they do land on someone that they like, do you really wait until your last of your third round picks to pull the trigger on potentially your most important draft pick of the class? So that's my only aspect when I kind of look through these drafts. Sometimes you do these mock drafts on PFF. You pass on a quarterback because you know it'll be there at the end of the third round just because of the
Right,
value of
right.
that you have in those simulations. But when it comes to draft day, those quarterbacks rise. And I think, if they find someone that they like, taking that quarterback at the end of the second round or that first pick of the third might be the slot that you pull the trigger on that position.
I was thinking about that specifically, what you're saying right now today, because if you think about it, when they have the three relatively grouped together picks between the Cowboys third and their comp third, like I was just talking about with safeties, are you going to be heartbroken if you don't get Ramsey and you get the safety from Penn State instead, who's in that same exact tier? There's a bunch of safeties. There's actually a lot of safeties that I like there. Probably not. Whereas with quarterback, you probably have a preference, and they're again, we don't know. But like you said, if they want to go quarterback in this range, I would not be surprised at all if the first of their third picks is the quarterback. One thing I would say, and this is the one area where you guys know how I feel about McCarthy. We've had some unique takes on him from the first words of the podcast. That this is the one area where I am excited about him. Dak Prescott was a fourth or a fifth round pick. He was a late pick. That's the path. If McCarthy pans out the way we hope that he can, this would be the upside of where you could get, maybe he gets a Carson back or a Nussmeier or a Peyton from North Dakota State, who I really like. Maybe he gets one of those quarterbacks, takes a swing, and they pan out. You get maybe not to the same level, but like a Brock Purdy. The Steelers' entire franchise looks different if that happens. And he's already worth the hire if that happens. So they're doing a lot of research, it sounds like, on Carson Beck. That's sometimes it can be smokescreen. I think the moves they make in this draft are going to be very telling because you're going to figure out what they prioritize. Where did they go with the quarterback? I think there's a lot of under the radar interesting things we'll know about the Steelers just from how the draft goes.
Absolutely. And we're sitting here March 30th, taping on Monday. This airs Wednesday. The amount of movement that happens in a draft room and draft boards in that last few weeks is literally outrageous. It makes
Yep.
0 sense. It makes sense when I'm following Major League Baseball draft because these kids are still playing, either high school or college. It makes
Right.
0 sense of why people move up and down an NFL draft board. It's very rare that you get, a weed bong picture the day of the draft that pushes someone down.
Yep.
Usually it's like these weird things that does it, and it's
Yeah.
all over the place. So I think the quarterback position is one that we'll keep the most tabs on to see how that sentiment of that draft board's going up and down. Because I would guarantee you there's probably going to be at least 4 quarterbacks taken before the end of the second.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
So that would be the Ty Simpson, Nussmeier, Carson Beck, and then Mendoza. So those would be your 4 that I think
Okay.
will probably all go before the end of the second.
That would be not an outlier. Quarterbacks just don't go in the second. So that'll be interesting. It's like a weird thing where if you like a quarterback, you're going to take him the first. If you don't, you're willing to wait.
Or
Historically, like
early
if you look at the
second.
numbers, but
Early second has started to happen a little bit more. You
it
got your
is.
Tyler
Yeah, it
Shuck,
is. But a
your
lot
Drew
of
Brees
times
back in the
teams
day.
will, yeah, a lot of times teams will trade up into the end of the first. It's kind of the same anyway, but they'll trade up
They
into
get
the end of
that
the
fifth
first
year
just to get
option.
that extra year. Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense for quarterback for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot to be excited about when it comes for the next month. But like Justin said at the top, we'll be all over the draft because it really is the most important thing for the Steelers.
And jumping right into Pitt here, last couple weeks, the lines have come out before the season. So Pitt's line for the season has come out. It surprised me a little bit. So the line that came out, just to lay it out for you, the line was 7.5 wins on the over-under for Pitt this season. I'm surprised it was 7.5. I was thinking it was going to be 6 to 6.5. You heard me, if you were listening, 2 months ago at this point when we gave our take right when the schedule came out. We went back and forth kind of between 7 to 8 wins was my take back and forth on one game swing basically where I ended up 7-5 versus 8-4. So I think the line is perfect. I'm a little surprised because historically I would argue, and I kind of felt this way, the line was a little too low on Pitt, which if you look at the numbers is probably accurate. We'll get into that in a second. But the line last 2 years, 5.5 and 6.5. And I think there was a lot of hype going into last year. Little bit of that may have had to do with the schedule, but 6.5, 5.5. I was a little surprised to see it a game higher than the last 2 years. What was your take on when you saw that number?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you touched on just right at the end there is that the fact that their 3 out of conference games are sure wins. Pitt has historically scheduled a little bit tougher out of conference when they've been over time. You know, you got your Notre Dames, your West Virginias. They would love to play Penn State. So they have these teams that they would want to play. They don't have those teams this year. So you got those easy stackable wins. So then it just talks about, you know, what are you going to do in conference then? Can you finish over 500 in conference or not? So that's essentially the bet here, back and forth, and really it probably is kind of a coin flip when it comes down to, you got a couple games here. You know, the Syracuse game early in the season, that's got to be a must win. If they don't win that game, 7.5 wins is going to be really hard to get to. Whereas
Right.
the flip side of that, if they can steal that game Friday night at Virginia Tech, then all of a sudden 7.5 feels like, you know, a shoe in. Maybe you got a small chance at 9 when you can steal a game that early in the season too. So there's a couple of early games in that season. So I think by, you know, mid October, you're going to know if 7.5 is a thing or not, if you're going to be betting that line.
So they do have, if you look at the way it lines up too. We were just talking about this with the Pirates a little bit, like the way a season can line up. I always felt like it was super important in college football to, like last year, the hype build a little bit, the excitement builds a little bit. It's so much more fun when it plays out that way in general. But they do have a higher over under than, I want to say. I have to look at the exact numbers, but they have like the fifth or sixth best odds to win the ACC, which I thought was a little surprising. There's a big gap between them and like first and second. But they do have a pretty high odds to win the ACC relative to what I was maybe expecting. It's higher than a lot of the teams that they play to start their season. So there is a path here where it could be a fun year for sure. We'll dive deep into the roster and some of my concerns where I think they could really improve in general. Usually I'd be a little surprised maybe by a game or a half game, whatever it is. I think this is the perfect line though. And I don't think I'd be saying that most years. 7 of Narduzzi's 10 years excluding COVID, there's some weird like ways it's set up that year. They've hit the over. Historically, Vegas under Narduzzi is probably undervalued Pitt a little bit. But yeah, like you said, I do think that this is largely due to the schedule. Finally, they've kind of maybe under scheduled where historically, especially during this period, they've probably over scheduled. Not probably, I know they have compared to a lot of the other ACC teams. I've got some concerns at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the line of scrimmage really for this team. They'll have to improve those things, but I think there's definitely a path to this being an over.
Yeah, and really the teams are playing in conference too. When you think of the Russian roulette that can happen with these massive conferences now, is Pitt's on a good side of the coin for that. So
Right.
when you kind of look through, you got Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Boston College, all winnable games. I said Syracuse as well. So first 4, all winnable. Probably the hardest one is at Virginia Tech. And then your only sure loss, probably when you're looking through their schedule, is at Miami. You know, Georgia Tech at home, winnable. Florida State at home, winnable. Louisville's always kind of a toss up with Pitt. Nobody really runs away with that game. And then Cal is not an impressive program where you're ever going to be scared going over to an empty Cal Berkeley Stadium on the beautiful days of November. So that's probably not even a bad time to have a game. That might be a good travel day for Pitt fans too. So maybe circle that on a calendar right around the Thanksgiving holiday. Get out there to California to get a little warm before the winter happens.
You just laid it out perfectly. I do really like Louisville this year, and I think Cal could be a surprise, but you don't look at that schedule and go, oh man, they have a tough schedule this year. That's probably a part of the reason for the 7.5. I think it's a perfect line. Like we said before, I had the under. I'll probably change my mind about 10 times between now and the season, but it's going to be right around that 7 to 8 win mark.
I'd be on the over right now. If you gunned ahead, if you had told me, hey, you got to bet one of these or the other, looking at this schedule right now, I think I'd rather have the coin flip on the high side of that.
Yeah, and I think Vegas slightly leans that way too, so that does make sense. All right, so this week, every week, as you know, if you've been listening, we do a nostalgia moment, we do a draft, or we go back through some memories that are always fun. We're gonna start playing some games. We're gonna start doing some trivia. We're gonna start testing Mr. Pirate here this week. So I want him to earn his name, Mr. Pirate, this week. We're going to play a Pirates trivia. I'm going to warn you, Joe, this is tough. It's fair. I think it's fair. When you don't get some of these questions, you're going to be like, I should have gotten that. I tried to be a little fair too. I tested this on a few people. 1 or 2 of them were really annoyed that I didn't hit the 70s and 80s more. There are 10 questions, but there are additional answers to some of these. So I'm going to put the over under on you getting the actual answers at 6.5. So your over under is a little lower than Pitt's on this, but it's kind of tough to say that because there are multiple parts to some of these. So question number 1, during our lifetime, so since 1988, literally just showing our age, what is the most regular season wins the Pirates have had over that span? They've tied it twice, just to
95. 98.
incorrect,
It's
Joe.
98.
It's 98. It's 90.
It's 98.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. Did you so 91 and 95?
I jumped too fast. It was
went
92,015 or 2015.
Right.
So
correct. Yeah. So well, I'll give that to you because you quickly changed. So 98 and 64, they went in both 91 and 15. Second question. We'll give you a little breakfast ball
that's
on the
an
first
asterisk one,
tee.
but I'll take it.
It's a
I'll
breakfast
slow down.
ball.
I got to think for a second now.
Yes. Okay. Well, how many times have the Pirates finished better than the famous 89 wins that you predicted last week during our lifespan? So again, that's 90 plus wins. How many times since 1988?
Not many. So
I just want people to realize how rare what we're predicting essentially is.
yeah,
You can take
I
as
think
much
they
time as you need.
only
We can-
had winning records for 7 of those seasons. So I think there's only 7 of the seasons in which you'd be over that. So we'll say three times over that total.
That is incorrect. It's 5.
5. What
So
seasons?
I will let you're playing against my dad, just so you know. You guys are currently tied at 1 correct answer each. The first Pirate since 1927 to be named NL MVP. It came in the 1960 season. I'll give you 1 guess, then I will give you a second hint. It's a tough one.
Was it Matt?
That's incorrect. And the hint plays right off of this. He was his middle infield pair on that team. Led the
Dick
league in
Groat.
batting average. Correct. Joe
Yeah.
that's 2 answers. All right. So question 4, I feel pretty good about this answer now because of that answer.
Your
So
dad
you're
got
doing
that
good.
one. He was a Pitt guy. So he
My dad
locked
did
that
not
one
get
in.
that one.
Oh, no. Chris,
Yeah.
what were you doing?
Yeah.
That should have been
Okay,
a
so-
shoo-in for you.
Yeah. So question 4, where did Dick Groat go to college?
Duke.
2-time okay, yeah. I was going to say he's from Pittsburgh. First player in 2011 to be named to both the college baseball and basketball Hall of Fame. Also played in the NBA. Everyone's gotten that question, which is good since they're Pitt people. So Joe is 3-1.
Okay.
So question 5, the most home runs all time as a Pirate. I'm going to give you the first, second, fourth, and fifth players on the list. You get to give me player number 3. Stargell, Kiner, this player, Clemente, and Bonds. So who is third on that list? All time as a Pirate home runs.
All time as a Pirate home runs. Now, if you went with like an older, like top of the line Pirate, it'd be like a Pie Trainer. I don't think that would be the case. You know, is it McCutcheon? Is McCutcheon at that stage? Is it in a Pirate uniform? In a Pirate uniform?
It's in a Pirate uniform, correct.
We'll go McCutcheon.
You are on fire, Joe. I'm going to say I'm impressed. He had 8 more than Clemente, so obviously got over that number. Coming back helped with that. But yeah, I'm impressed. I gotta say, I was a little worried we might have to cut this whole segment if you got like 2 right, but you're doing well. And I will say this starts leaning towards you. I think this is where the other people playing this game started to tail off. So number 6, most Pirate home runs since 2000. The top 5 players again, 1 player. This is in a season. So this isn't most home runs total as a Pirate. This is most home runs in a Pirate uniform in a season. The top 5 seasons. 1 player is on the list twice at first and third.
So Brian Giles is on that list.
He was first and
Pedro's
third.
on that list.
He was fourth.
McCutcheon got over 30 before. Is he on that list?
That's incorrect.
McCutcheon's not on that list.
But I will give you 1 wrong answer. Because I did give that.
How many did Matt
30
Stairs hit? Is Matt Stairs on that list?
Another, just to give you help a little bit, 35 was 5th on the list. So these are all seasons over 35 home runs.
Over 35. Craig Wilson?
That's incorrect.
Yeah.
So you missed. So you had 1, 3, and 4. You had Giles, and Alvarez. You missed Josh Bell in 2019, 37, and Jason Bay in 06. He had 35. So there's a lot. It's tough because there's a lot of people kind of grouped around right after that. That was good. 3 out of 5.
My next guess was going to be a
2
Ramos
out of 5.
Ramirez, so I was going to be wrong if I kept going too.
Yep. Okay. So question 7. Last Pirate to hit for the cycle. I feel like this is one you're going to get right away, or you're not going to get it. I'll give you the year if you want a hint.
Yeah, give me the year.
The last player prior to that was Daryl Ward. This was at home. The last Pirate prior to
I
that at
remember
home was
Daryl
Jason
Ward.
Kendall in 2000.
2016. Boy, was it Josh Harrison?
Incorrect. It was
Yeah.
John Jaso.
John Jaso. Wow.
Yeah, it was a late September 20.
The Predator hair. How did he get a triple? Holy cow.
I know. I
Same
was
with
like, I
Daryl
remember
Ward.
this happening, but I don't know how many times you would have had to give me guesses for me to get that one. So that was a tough one. Number 8. Who threw the last Pirates no-hitter?
You mean the dual no-hitter? The Ricardo Rincon no-hitter? Was he the last one?
I don't know.
No?
That's the question.
Ricardo Rincon. Final answer.
And you got the harder end of that. That is correct. That is the last no-hitter was a combined no-hitter, 97. I had the poster in my basement literally until 2 years ago.
Who was on the other side of that? Was it? Boy.
Well, you have this.
It wasn't Chris Benson. I know it wasn't Chris Benson. I don't know. I can't remember.
Francisco Cordova.
Yes, Francisco Cordova. I should have known that. Yep.
I can't believe you knew Rincon, but not Cordova. I guess just because he did it, maybe he was the last pitcher. But yeah, you got the harder end of the two on that one.
Yeah, no, you'd say that for sure.
I'll give you half a point. You knew when it happened. So that's shocking. 97 was the last time they had a no-hitter. That's kind of crazy. And then John Jaso gets a cycle. So, okay, question number 9.
Pirates trivia is hard. A lot of teams trivia is a lot easier than it is for Pirates trivia.
Yes. Who hit the last? You should know this one. I didn't even have to look this one. Who hit the last home run at Three Rivers?
No, that one either. I don't know why I'm thinking like Warren Morris, but that's not going to be it.
I can give you
I'm
a hint.
going to say Warren Morris just for a name drop of a random second baseman with power.
I do like that name drop. He did have that one. Was it his rookie season? He had a crazy season.
Yeah,
He's not the right answer. I will give you a hint that when I gave the hint, one of the people that was doing this already did get it. He's from Pittsburgh.
He is from Pittsburgh. Wayner.
Correct. There you go. See? Bonus question on this one, which I did not come up with, but the person doing it asked me to say this. Who was the first person to hit a home run at PNC? Not a Pirate.
Hit a home run.
Played for the Reds.
Not a Pirate? Just first home run?
Yeah.
Sean Casey.
Correct. And the tie was he's also from Pittsburgh. So,
yeah.
Very good,
the
Joe.
red drop
You're
was
killing
enough
this.
for me.
You're killing this. So, last question. Yeah, this is a multi-part answer. Question 10. Name the Pirates that have hit home runs into the Allegheny on the fly. There are 4, and one of them has done it twice. There is one hint that I can give you. Well, I'll just give you the hint. No one did it in the first 10 years at PNC as a Pirate. First 10 or so years.
First 10 years, no one did it. Matt Stairs never did it in his time. He was going to be someone I would say, but you just told me it wasn't him. So Pedro definitely did it.
That's one.
Daryl Ward, I believe, has done it
as a Pirate. I won't knock you out because he was the first one to ever do it, but he did it as an Astro.
Adam LaRoche.
Incorrect. That's one. I'll give you 2 wrong answers.
Oh, big power lefty.
No righties obviously ever done it, Pirate or not, on the fly.
Polanco.
Incorrect.
No Polanco.
Oh, you can keep guessing.
Jeez, I'm just trying to think of lefties. There hasn't been too many good lefties as you'd expect for not in the first 10 years. So 2011.
One player did it twice in the same year, actually.
Twice in the same year. Yeah, I'm Blake. You got to round it out for me. Who else is out there?
Cruz did it 2 years ago in 24.
Okay. Yeah.
Garrett Jones did it in 2013.
G.I. Jones.
And the player that did it twice in 2019, that should give it away. Josh Bell.
Yeah, Josh Bell. Yeah, I
thought you were going to get Josh Bell. That's a tough question. So, also,
apparently
Josh
Bell is my blind spot. Got 2 wrong answers with Josh Bell today.
Well, it makes sense he would be a blind spot. It's kind of tough to remember that, but I think you did awesome on this. Yeah, you did really well. I will say I was a little worried when I ran this by a few people. I'm like, yeah, Mr. Pirate might lose his name on the podcast, but you earned your name. We will allow you to keep the name or the nickname that I gave you. You didn't even want the name. We'll allow you to keep Mr. Pirate after that finish.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope I name dropped at least some interesting Pirates on the ones I got wrong. So
yeah, you did. You did. They were fun wrong answers at least.
Yeah, I knew they were wrong, so I might as well make someone smile out there if they remember a Warren Morris Beanie Baby just like I do.
No, there you go. Perfect.
All right. Well, for those of you guys who are still with us, we appreciate it. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next Wednesday.
See you later.